we've got the phenomenon now of right-wing vegans. I think probably there's always been some vegans that have been right-wing, but there seem to be more of them, or they seem to be making more of a noise now. And one of the things that they'd say is that, well, you know, under socialist systems or under systems claiming to be socialist, you know, other animals have been equally as oppressed as they have been under capitalism. So, you know, as far as the animals are concerned, does it really make any difference what system we live under?
No one should be under the misconception that capitalism is somehow benign toward other animals, or for that matter, toward all the inhabitants of the planet. You know, for 10,000 years, you know, people pursuing material gain, you know, primarily, you know, powerful men, they've just rampaged the planet. They did it for material gain. They had the power to do it, and they eventually created states to institutionalize that power. And then they always used ideological control, you know, to naturalize, normalize, and, you know, that oppression. And that system, you know, just morphed into capitalism. Capitalism wasn't any significant break from that system. Capitalism is just a more nuanced, sophisticated form. So when that terrible, predaceous system exploded onto the rest of the world through colonization, and most peoples around the world began to experience all this brutality and genocide and oppression that was economically motivated and framed the basis for the capitalist system, then some people began to dream of alternatives. So there was a dream, for example, of communism / socialist system. So people tried to give that a go. And of course, capitalists resisted that. So they tried to give it a go in the Soviet Union with the revolution in the early 20th century. And initially, it looked very promising, and it looked democratic, and they had, hi there, and they had these, aren't you a beauty?
So I did warn you that I would be disrupted by that. This is little jazz, this one.
Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah. Yeah. Welcome. Yeah, but my point is, you know, before they could even try to get that system off the ground and, you know, and have all this input from citizen councils and workers, then the powerful capitalist countries, I mean, they said this is not going to happen. You know, this is a precedent that this challenge to capitalism is bad for the people of the world, and this is given people in the United States, you know, ideas on what they could do. So they launched these vicious militaristic attacks on the newly forming Soviet Republic, and when they couldn't take them down militarily, then they started this Cold War. And then, you know, when there's no blueprint, you know, for a compassionate, egalitarian, you know, socialist / communist society, so they didn't really get a chance to move in that direction because they fell into this defensive posture. They had to become increasingly militaristic and try to keep up with the threats of the United States. You know, the government fell into the hands of increasingly, you know, men characterized by toxic masculinity, as those were the defenders of the new republic. So, and then, you know, the U.S., you know, tries to strangle them, you know, economically with embargoes and sanctions. So it's very difficult, you know, for the ideals that would include, you know, justice for all and nonviolence. You know, when you're faced with violence and people are suffering deprivation, it's going to be a hard sell, you know, to them that, you know, that they should back off from eating products derived from other animals. So it didn't work in the Soviet Union. You know, people in Southeast Asia, you know, they suffered all the horrors of colonization. They tried to go in a different direction. In Vietnam, you know, they tried that. You know, they just wanted to get out from under France colonization. The people supported the communists. The communists were providing education, promoting land reform, and that was it. The people were looking for an improved quality of life, and of course, the U.S. didn't allow that to happen. People in Indonesia tried to go in that direction. They had more than 1 million members of the Communist Party there. It looked like they were going to elect a communist government. So the U.S. and CIA backed a brutal military coup there that ended up killing, by some estimates, 1 million people. And a book came out recently about that, called The Jakarta Method by Vincent Bevins. And Bevins, he talks about that. He talks about how the CIA orchestrated that. And then when countries in South America, for example, like in Chile, they voted in a socialist president, or other countries are leading that direction, then they basically take that horrific, violent, militaristic Jakarta method that they used against the people in Indonesia, and they use that, to in these vicious coups in Chile and in Argentina and in Brazil. So I guess my point is, and then Cuba, that is right next door. I mean, United States, they tried to take them down during the Bay of Pigs, and they weren't that successful. So they've been trying to this day, through this horrible economic embargo and economic sanctions. So I guess that's a long-winded way of saying, socialist systems, I believe, would open the door to peaceful and just societies if socialism could get out from under the attack of these brutal capitalist societies. And then socialism, broadly speaking, and we could, and if people had the opportunity, they could be ingenious in coming up with their own variations and versions in grassroots types, and kind of, in some cases, maybe an anarchist socialism, in which, if people are able to control their political circumstances, it's a real democracy. If we had an economic democracy, so we weren't governed by elites and they weren't controlling our economic systems, and we had educational systems and mass media that were controlled by the people, then you and Roger would be on TV. You and Roger, your work would be taught in the educational institution. You and Roger, could be, maybe standing for political office, to move us forward. So socialism creates a window. It's no guarantee, but socialism creates a window for true democratic, political, economic, educational institutions. And it is in that environment that we could challenge racism, sexism, all forms of prejudice and discrimination against LGBTQ people. We can challenge speciesism, and maybe we could even save the planet from the coming environmental apocalypse. So animals have suffered under socialism, but it's not a socialism that's been allowed to develop to the extent that now we can begin moving toward promoting social justice for all.